There's nothing in the Constitution about the details of the judicial branch. The only thing in the Constitution about the judicial branch is that there is one. This is what specifies the details of the judicial branch. It's updated constantly. The original one was the 1789 Judiciary Act. And originally there were 5 Supreme Court Chief Justices, not justices, but justices, 1 Chief Justice, of course. The current version of the Supreme Court is based on the most recent Judiciary Act, which I'm really not even sure when that law was passed. By and large, it's consistent. It is the same. What we have here is a 3-tiered system. And then within each tier, there are 3 tiers. So it's a 3-by-3 system. And I'll be saying things and you'll think, well, yeah. But there's nothing, well, yeah, about it. They came up with this idea. So at first, we're going to pay attention to this column right here. I call it the national government. Again, that's a mistake on my part. We don't have a national government. We have a federal government. And that's definitely different. A national government dictates policy for the nation. A federal government acknowledges that, well, there are these other things out there called states. And we in the states have to have sort of a balancing act. And that's what we have. We have a federal government. So don't put national, put federal. And can you see the map? The federal system creates a number of regions or districts. Wisconsin happens to be in a region that includes the state of Illinois plus the state of Indiana. That's the federal district that we are in. Across the St. Croix River, you are in another federal district. So it creates districts, regions, I suppose, for federal policy. If I, in the engagement of a crime, cross over a state line. I cross over the Wisconsin-Illinois state line. I kidnapped Sint. I've had it. Look at that face. So I'm waiting by his car. Did you drive here today? I'm waiting by his car. I cut his Achilles. I grab him, shove him in the car, and I all right, they'll never follow me to Illinois. So I cross over into Illinois. Now the feds are involved because I've just crossed state lines. Until then, I was violating Wisconsin law. Now that I've crossed state lines, I have violated federal law. So the state of Wisconsin will put, assuming I get caught, the state of Wisconsin will put me on trial for kidnapping. The United States will put me on trial for taking a minor across state lines. That's a separate trial. Yes, dear.
Would that still work like that if you just go from Somerset to Stillwater?
Is that a state line?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So you could just drive like 5 miles and still.
Yes. Are you questioning the wisdom of my crime? Like, why Illinois? Why don't I just go to Minnesota?
Yeah. No, I was just wondering.
Fine, I'll go to Minnesota. I did that Illinois thing so that we could stay in Brown region, right? But now that I've crossed over to Minnesota, the complication arises then, like, well, then which federal district will put me on trial? They'd have to figure that out. This is true. There was a crime probably about 10 years ago where someone from North Dakota crossed over into Minnesota, kidnapped someone. Her name was Drew Shadeen. Does that name ring a bell with anybody? Yeah. Does this story ring a bell? Yeah. Kidnapped her at a gas station, brought her back to his home in North Dakota, killed her, and the state of North Dakota put him on trial. The state of Minnesota put him on trial, and then the United States put him on trial. He got the death penalty. Exactly. And he's rotting in Minnesota right now, awaiting his death sentence. Does Minnesota have the death penalty? No. It does not. But because he crossed over that mythical line, does the United States have the death penalty? Yeah. It does. The United States has the death penalty. So let's say that had he done that let's go back to the Sint, me kidnapping Sint. So let's just say that I cut his Achilles, shove him in the car, cross over the St. Croix River, and then, I hate to be gruesome here, but execute you. Okay, God, why? Okay, sorry. It is possible that I would face the death sentence even though my entire crime spree took place in 2 states with no death penalty, because I crossed over that mythical line. The United States has the death penalty. So the entire crime took place in 2 states with no death penalty. I could still be executed for that crime. But let's say that, so I would find myself, because I'm in the brown part, I would find myself in a federal district court, one of these little squares right here. And the United States would be taking me on in a crime. So the United States versus D. Potter, nation versus private. Okay? And let's just say that during the entire trial, my lawyer slept. Never called a single witness, never cross-examined anyone, and shockingly, I was found guilty. Well, I would appeal. I would appeal that I did not get a fair trial, and that would go to an appellate court. That's this level. These are appellate courts. Appellate means appeal, a court of appeal. Now, here's one of the misunderstandings of appellate courts. It is not a new trial. I don't get to call my witnesses during that trial. What is on trial in an appeals trial? Anyone want to take a guess? You think the trial is on trial. The trial that I had is on trial. Did the judge act appropriately? Did the lawyers act appropriately? Were the rules followed? I'm not being put on trial. My trial is put on trial. And the appeals court could say the trial was fine or do it again. That's it. They almost never say, you're free to go. That's never done in an appeals court. I mean, very rarely. It's either the trial was proper or do it again. And if it's do it again, then I have another trial. Well, let's say that the state of Wisconsin feels like I got a fair trial. They could appeal. So it's an appeal of appeal, and that goes to the Supreme Court. Okay? So that's when the nation versus private. There are situations, though, where one state sues another. I'll give you an example. It happened in Minnesota and Wisconsin. You know that bridge, that brand new thing? That is the result of a lawsuit. So the previous bridge was the Hudson Bridge, and I remember when that thing was built. And I believe it was Wisconsin's turn to pay for the bridge, so they paid for the bridge. And then the next bridge to come along, because it connects 2 states, it was Minnesota's turn. But Minnesota kept delaying building that thing. I mean, that thing is like 30 years late, right? Wisconsin sued Minnesota, like, build the thing. And it was like, well, we'll get around to it. So they sued. When one state sues another state, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. So state versus state. Or you have situations where a state can sue the U.S. government. So about 10 years ago, the United States government said, we want to take soldiers from Minnesota and send them to Iraq. And the governor of Minnesota said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm going to sue the United States to prevent that from happening. It goes straight to the Supreme Court. So when a state sues the nation, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. Any questions on that, Colin? Go ahead.
Who won the Minnesota, Wisconsin?
Oh, Minnesota lost. The president has every right to commandeer, take over soldiers from any state. It's called the Minnesota National Guard.
Oh, no, not that. The bridge part.
The Brit? Well, it's been built,
Okay,
so.
I wasn't sure, like,
Very sharp one.
they were just ready to take
Same thing happens within the state of Wisconsin. You and I are in St. Croix County. Any crime that occurs within St. Croix County is in District 10 of the state system. So here we are in District 10. District 13 was blown away by nukes. It's gone. Okay. So anytime the state of Wisconsin takes you on, like 98% of trials are state trials. They almost always occur in one moment, which means it's probably within one state. So almost all trials are state versus private. But let's say that you have, excuse me, this happened in Minnesota. Actually, it's still going on. So the county up in Chisago area, so slightly northwest of here, they're trying to build a new place to put a dump. And anyone ever heard of NIMBY? N-I-M-B-Y? NIMBY? Sociology students, you've heard of NIMBY. We just talked about it. NIMBY? NIMBY? N-I-M-B-Y? No one in here has ever heard of NIMBY? Not in my backyard. Not in my backyard. NIMBY. Do we need a new dump? Oh, yeah, we need a new dump. We got to put the trash somewhere, but not here. Put it over there. Hey, we need a new school for poor students. We need a new housing. Oh, that's a great idea, but not here. Put it over there. Hey, we need a new prison. We need a new prison. Oh, fabulous idea, but don't put it here. Put it over there. So in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota said, we're going to put a new dump in your county, and the county sued, saying, we don't want this dump here, put it over there. That's one county suing the state. Go straight to the state Supreme Court. Does anyone know, where is the state Supreme Court for Wisconsin? It's in Madison. The state Supreme Court is in Madison.
But ours is in
Superior.
Our district court
Yeah.
is actually in Hudson.
Oh, not. But my sister has to go to the one to get her name changed or her birthday changed.
I'm not sure about
Her
that one.
birthday
Okay.
change?
Yeah.
The appellate court is in Eau Claire. So you commit a crime, you're probably going to be in Hudson. Now, I'm not talking about jaywalking. That's local. Yeah. But you commit a serious crime, you will be in Hudson.
Like,
If your lawyer sucks and you're appealing, you will be in Eau Claire. If they appeal again, it's in Madison. So it's the same thing. There's an original level, and then an appellate level, and then the ultimate state level court of appeals. But wait, it doesn't end there. The Sitt family has been emotionally distraught by my crime against them. They couldn't go to work for weeks because they missed their son so much, and that's lost wages. So they sue me in private court. That's a whole other thing. Private lawsuits are a whole other thing. And you've learned all of this in civics, I assume, or you're learning it now, or you will learn. I don't know. You guys take that class. Anyway, the threshold is much lower here. What I mean is, over here, what's the assumption of guilt? I, the accused, am what?
Innocent.
I'm presumed innocent. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I did it. If you're not sure, you have to say not guilty. But over here in the private lawsuit area, it's just whoever does a slightly better job than the other. So here's the evidence that I did do it. Here's the evidence that I did not do it. Now, take a feather. Where's it landing? Where's it landing? If it lands on me, probably did it. That means I'm a feather worth more guilty than not guilty. I'm guilty because I'm a feather's worth more guilty than not guilty. By the way, what's heavier, 100 pounds of feathers or 100 pounds of bricks?
They're the same weight. It's 100 pounds.
Feathers.
Last time you said bricks.
No, it's feather. Okay, you don't believe me?
no.
Jack?
I just want to know your.
Okay, we'll do a little experiment tomorrow. We will have 2 trap doors. On top of one trap door are 100 pounds of bricks. On the other is 100 pounds of feathers. I'll stand under the feathers. You stand under the bricks. And we'll release both and see about your both experiment. I'm going with feathers. Okay.
If you die because you're like covered in so many feathers.
Meet the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court ever. His name was John Jay. There he is, John Jay. You have to understand this, that, when George Washington won the first presidency, no one really knew what Georgie was going to do. And he established all sorts of patterns that were followed by future presidents. Those were called precedents. Same thing here. He's the first justice of the Supreme Court. No one really knew what that meant exactly. And he would establish precedents, patterns to be followed later. Any questions?
How do you spell that?
THAT.
How do you spell?
Precedent?
Yeah.
PRECEDENT. C-E-D-E-N-T. Precedent. Pattern to be followed later. Right? Pattern to be followed.
Were you in a spelling bee? That sounded just like someone would say in a spelling bee. Precedent.
Okay.
Precedent.
The first Secretary of the Treasury. The executive branch have people that work for the president. That's in the executive branch. Among those were 5 secretaries. Secretary of State, Secretary of War, Secretary of the Treasury, the Attorney General, and the Postmaster General. The post office was a big deal back then.
That's Benjamin Franklin.
No.
The first Postmaster General?
Right.
That's Benjamin Franklin.
But not under the new Constitution.
All right, take it back.
Anyway, the first Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton had all sorts of ideas about taxes and a national bank. As you know from your documents, document 1 people, he had ideas about should the U.S. government be able to tax? What kind of tax should it be? Where should we put that money? So he comes up with a plan. Because remember, when the United States was born, we were already in debt. Not only was the United States government in debt, each state was in debt. So there were 13 entities that were in debt, plus the federal government itself was in debt. We're heavily in debt. And Georgie turns to Alex here and says, fix it. Fix our debt. And he says, okay, I will. First of all, I'll create a national bank. Because if we're going to collect taxes, we got to put it somewhere. A Bank of the United States. A big bank. With impressive columns. So it looks official-like. Okay? Now, how are we going to collect tax money? Well, let's tax imports. What's that called? A tax on imports. It's called a tariff. So you have the nation's first tariff. It's called the Tariff of 1789. It made imports more expensive, correct? Anyone take econ? Any micro or macro? When you tax imports, what happens to the cost of products made in the U.S.? So I'll dumb it down for you, right? I'll dumb it down for you, right? You have this T-shirt over here. It's made in Paris. Let's just say it costs $1. And you have a T-shirt made in Philly. Let's just say it costs $1. Okay. Now, Jack, you own the T-shirt company making in Philly. Ben, you are in France. You make the T-shirts in Paris. Okay. It costs you $1. That includes the manufacturing, the product itself, the cotton, the labor. It costs you $1. So, Jack, how much are you going to sell this T-shirt for? If you sell it for $1, you made no money. How much are you going to sell for? $2. Okay, you're going to make 100% profit. You're the guy in Philly, right? Okay. So, how much are you going to sell yours for? $1.25. All right, very shrewd, right? But there's 100% tariff because it's made in Paris. So now that T-shirt costs $2.50. Right? Very good. The U.S. government now makes $1.25 per T-shirt. Okay, Jack, what are you going to do? The cost of yours? You're going to sell for $2? You're going to make it the same price as his. His is $2.50. $2.25. Aha. So, econ people, did the tariff increase the price of the French T-shirt? Yes, it went from $1.25 to $2.50. Did the tariff increase the price of the T-shirt made in Philly?
Yes.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Indirectly, but it certainly did. It certainly did. He went from one price and then he jacked it up. That's a little bit of Econ 101. Import taxes do increase the cost of imports, but they also have the unintended consequence And in econ, don't you guys always talk about unintended consequences? Isn't that a constant term? Okay. They have the unintended consequence of raising domestic prices too, because American companies realize it's still cheaper than the import. Americans will still buy ours. They're still saving money over the other one. Okay, so that's one of the unintended consequences of this tariff. It was supposed to help American manufacturing because there'd be an increase in demand. The problem was it caused, what's that I word again? Inflation. Everything costs more. Everything. Okay, now let's think about this. Why are tariffs a win-win? Let me explain. Why is the U.S. government happy if you buy the American-made t-shirt instead of the French t-shirt? And why is the U.S. government perfectly delighted if you buy the French t-shirt?
They're making money.
They get money either way. So either
Why would the U.S. government make money if you buy the Philly t-shirt? There's no tax on domestic-made products.
Consumers are happy, or business merchants or whatever you want to
Okay,
say today
so
are
you're
happy.
promoting the American economy. If you buy the Philly-made t-shirt, you're helping American manufacturing. You're helping the economy grow, increase demand. Jack will hire 100 new workers to make even more t-shirts. You're generating revenue for the U.S. economy. That's what we mean by we say the economy is growing. And now, why is the U.S. government perfectly delighted if you buy the French one? You just made $1.25 per t-shirt, per shirt. And where the U.S. government put that money? In the national bank to pay off the debt. Okay. Part 3 is called an excise tax. An excise tax is a tax on a specific product, one specific product. Can anyone, at the time it was a tax on whiskey, can anyone come up with an excise tax today? A tax that the United States imposes on one specific product. And let me help you to try and figure out what this product might be. They are also called sin taxes. Sin taxes are taxes that the United States imposes on certain products to get you to not buy it. And if you do buy it, fine. Very good. Cigarettes. Gasoline. The U.S. government doesn't want you to smoke. So what they do is they discourage you from smoking by making cigarettes really expensive. How much is a pack these days? Anyone? Pack a day? No pack a dayers in here? How do you know?
We already did this.
Yeah. So the U.S. government is happy if you don't buy it because we have a healthier populace. Is happy if you, well, I don't know about happy, but they'll make money if you do buy it. We're going to tax whiskey. Okay. The next part of his plan was assumption of state debts. Have we talked about this before? I'm going to decide. I've decided. You know that one test that you guys took, that Unit 1 exam. It was 63, and I threw out 4 questions, so it actually ended up being about out of 59. I've decided I'm gonna give all of you 59 out of 59.
Yes. Life.
You're welcome, everyone. Now I want you to let that sink in for a moment.
No, the people who do good on it.
And now, just hold on. Just let that sink in for a moment. Let's see here. I know he's one. Liv, what do you think about that? What do you think about my decision to give everyone 100% credit? Liv doesn't like it. Jack, I know you're another one. What does Jack think about it? Are you? Because when I first said it, I heard you say, what? Oh, you do? I picked on the wrong person. Buthlink, are you one of them?
I am.
Probably not.
I got 100.
You did? What do you think?
No.
You did.
You did not. A person who got like.
All right.
I got like an 84.
Oh, I got like nothing.
To those of you who earned the 59,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Boo.
Boo hiss. Why?
Because the other people didn't work as hard.
You earned it.
Yeah,
I, the teacher, by the way, I'm not. I, the teacher, reward Laziness. I'm rewarding, I'm not trying to sound cruel here, but not smart as others-ness, right? You didn't do as well, and yet I'm rewarding you. I am, in a way, punishing those of you, if I were doing this, I would be punishing those of you who earned that grade and rewarding those of you who did not earn that grade. And that was the criticism about Hamilton's idea about assuming state debts. Assuming state debt means that the federal government would pay off each state's debt. How did states that had huge state debts feel about that idea? Awesome. How about those states that really didn't have much debt at all?
Boo.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, it happened to be by region. The northern states had huge debts. That's where the Revolutionary War was most successfully fought. They were the ones fighting and winning against the British. The states that had almost no debt were the southern states, and they didn't do so well. Well, I mean, you could make some conclusions. Where they borrowed a ton of money is where they bought a lot of weaponry, is where they did well. Where they didn't have much debt is where they didn't buy all that much weaponry, is where the British kind of kicked their butt. So you could make an argument, yeah, we were in debt. We won the war. Thanks, South. But that's a fight for a different day. What I'm telling you is that northern states were heavily in debt. They loved it. Southern states were not heavily in debt. They were totally against it. And now we are beginning to see the new divide within the effort to create a new we, Americans. There's already a split. And we did address another split last week, and that is northern states told southern states you got 20 years to figure out slavery because it's over in 1807. It's going to be over. So I'm readdressing this new split, north-south. The north-south split. Finally, the last part of his plan was to pay off the national debt. To pay off the national debt. So we're going to create a bank. We're going to have two taxes to collect money. The federal government will pay off every state's debt. And we'll pay it off. It'll take a while. How are we doing there?
Not good.
Not good.
Real bad. This is the 2005 national debt when we had the adorable debt amount of $8 trillion. That's adorable. $8 trillion.
Are we at like 20 right now?
Almost 20. So in 12 years, think about this. In 12 years, we have accumulated more debt than in the previous 240
Yay.
in the last 12 years. And we can blame Democrats and Republicans because our national debt under Obama spiked and it's continued under Trump. So both Democrats and Republicans can take credit for the incredible debt that has accumulated over the past 12 years.
That's how many hours.
So mixed bag as far as success is concerned, but at least he had a plan. He had a plan.
Let's see. 24 hours in a day.
I went back to this one because we have to throw these southern states a little bit of a reward. Here, southern states, we're going to help out northern states because they were in debt, but here, to make you happy, we'll build the new federal capital in the South. And you might think today, Washington, D.C. isn't in the South. Yes, it is. During the entire Civil War, slavery was legal in Washington, D.C. Slaves helped build the national capital. There are these amazing pictures that you can find on Google of slaves helping to build the Capitol building, the building that's there now, built with slave labor. So what they did was they carved out a chunk of Maryland, carved out a chunk of Virginia, creating a non-state. The District of Columbia is not a state. And they did that intentionally. Does anyone know why? Why is our national capital not in a state? Yeah, you're on the right track here. They did. Go ahead. Yes, that's the idea, that it would not be bound by that state's laws. Right? You create a federal district so that it is not under the subject will of the governor of the state. We don't want that. So let's carve it out of Maryland and Virginia. How many of you have been there?
Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. Yeah.
I don't know.
My father went to college at Gallaudet, which is in Washington, D.C. So again, the reason the Capitol was built here was to appease southern states because of Hamilton's plan to pay off all state debts. This was a little bone to throw to the southern dogs. Here you go. We'll build the new federal capital where slavery is legal. Oh, sorry. Any questions here? Not too much.
Nah, bruh.
Okay. So I've created this chart here, 2 columns. One's called Federalists, the Federalist Party, and one's called the Democratic Republicans. This is Team Hamilton. Hooray for federal government. Hooray for taxes. Hooray for spending. Let's have the government do things. Let's have them build roads and canals and eventually railroads and a large military. The government solves problems. And in this column is Team Jefferson. The government doesn't solve problems. The government is the problem. And all I've done is created contrasting parts to the two original political parties. The Federalists were liberal. That means hooray for government. Government solves problems. The Democratic Republicans were conservative. That means states should get to decide things, not the federal government. It should be states. So who was led by? Hamilton, Jefferson. What do they believe in? Well, the Federalists believe in strong central government. They believe that the federal government should help industries. So tax imports, that'll help American industry. Democratic Republicans said, no. We should let states be the things that run how the country is going. States should do it, not the feds. And we should believe in what Jefferson called the common man, the brilliance of the masses. Hamilton would call those masses sheep or the mob. Do you see the basic difference here? Jefferson believes in the collective wisdom of the group. Hamilton says it's a mob. That's not wisdom. They're sheep. I'll give you another example. Who would come up with a better idea? Einstein or this room? Okay. Jefferson would argue this room because there are 50 of us in here. We will come up with things Einstein wouldn't have thought of. Hamilton would say, Einstein. He's Einstein. You're not. He's got more brain power than all of us. We won't think of good ideas. We'll just think of a lot of ideas. We'll think quantity. He would think quality. That would be Hamilton's argument. Jefferson would say, nope, out of this collection, good ideas will arise. The collective brilliance of the masses versus the mob. Let's keep going. Hamilton wanted us to be an industrialized nation, modern, cutting edge, cities, big cities where lots of people live, industries, cities. Jefferson said, no, farms, simple life, rural. This is going to sound weird, but Hamilton was loose and Jefferson was strict. Allow me to expound on that. Hamilton said, let's create a national bank. Does it say in the Constitution that you can create a national bank? Where in the Constitution does it say, and the Secretary of the Treasury shall have the authority to create a national bank? Does it say that? It doesn't. So can you? Can you create a national bank if the Constitution doesn't say you can create a national bank? Some of you are saying yes. You know what Jefferson would say? You can't do that. You can't create a national bank. Show me where it says you can create a national bank in the Constitution. It doesn't say you can, so you can't. And Hamilton's response was, come on, doesn't say you can't. It doesn't say you can't, so you can. Hamilton's "it doesn't say you can't, so you can" is a loose interpretation of the Constitution. We can do anything we want as long as the Constitution doesn't forbid it. Now, what does the Constitution forbid? Look at the Bill of Rights. That's what it forbids. Jefferson says, no, you can't because it doesn't say you can. We can only do what this piece of paper says we can do. Otherwise, we can't. That is a strict interpretation of the Constitution. This gives the federal government a lot more power. Go ahead. Do it. Build roads. Require companies to list their ingredients of Oreo cookies. Go ahead. You show me where it says in the Constitution, and the federal government shall not require what's in Oreos. It doesn't. So you can. And of course, Jefferson would say, but it doesn't say you can. So you can't. Okay, just a different interpretation of the authority of the Constitution. A couple more. As a result of their loose or strict interpretation of the Constitution, Hamilton favored the national bank. Jefferson opposed the national bank. You can't build a national bank. Yeah, we can. No, you can't. Your mom. Hamilton favored the tariff of 1789. Jefferson opposed it. You can't tax imports. Why not? And one other interesting thing, Hamilton favored the British, whereas Jefferson favored the French. And you might be wondering, well, why? By this time, the French had already beheaded a bunch of people and given power to the masses, right? Which fits, doesn't it? The common man. Whereas Hamilton says, no, we need to favor the British way of doing things, the elite. Now, we don't have a king, but we do have the Electoral College, and we do restrict voting rights, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That's it. Okay, that took a long time. Sorry.
3, 9, or 10.
Yes, sir.
3, 9, or 10.
Yeah.
3.
3.
Okay, get into your groups. Get into your groups by document. Same place you were before. Go.
3s.
Hurry up.
These are the last days at the pavilion. Yeah. November 3rd, 9th to 10th. And he has your student number, so you can get that done too. You can get it.
Let's try getting through 2 documents today. 2. The first 2.
I don't know which one of those is the best.
I want to go to Purdue.
What's my group?
What are you?
A 1. I said she's my group. Yeah.
Okay, let's try and get through 2 documents, and then I will address your requirement of finding an article that you're actually going to quote from in your second essay. I will kind of help you in that little quest. Where is document 1? I'm assuming it's this group right here. All right.
That's not mine.
So who is our speaker of document 1?
Hamilton.
It's Mr. Hamilton, which you now understand a little bit better. Mr. Hamilton, hooray for federal government. What is the issue?
Paying off state debts.
You're being a little bit too specific.
Remote funding.
That's a little bit too specific.
Taxes.
It's the word before issue.
Economic.
Economic. That's the issue. The federal government's role as far as economic concerns. So please picture this, that when you're writing this little essay, your topic sentence for the body of your paper in your essay will simply argue that Hamilton had a certain point of view about economic issues. That's going to be as specific as we get. Then specific examples include tariffs, spending, national banks. Those are all specific examples of the bigger issue, economic issues. So think about your document. The issue is the general thing, the big idea. Those specific things that you're talking about, those are specific examples that you can put into the meat of your essay. Okie dokie. So who's this Hamilton fella?
He's a Federalist.
He is a Federalist, that's true. Anything else we know about this fella?
He's a writer.
He's a writer? Okay, he wrote, that's true. Anything else? Good, he's the Secretary of the Treasury.
He is.
He's the Secretary of the Treasury. All right. So I'm going to let this group take over here in a second. I'm just going to ask you, how does he feel about a national bank and why? How does he feel about taxes and why? How does he feel about spending and why? Go ahead.
I can answer all those.
He is in.
Nice and loud so everybody can hear you.
He is in favor of taxes.
And the bank
thinks we
and the
need
tariffs
them.
and he's in favor of all of what you just like.
All of this stuff right here.
Because
Yeah.
we're in debt.
Because
He thinks they
Jefferson,
can pay off debt.
Yes.
but also
there's a need.
because Jefferson doesn't believe in that.
Well, that's true. Well, no. She just said he believes in it because Jefferson doesn't. No.
For the opposite reason that Jefferson.
Yeah,
believed.
that's right. Hamilton believes in it not because Jefferson doesn't, but Hamilton believes in it, and the way we know it is by pointing out that Jefferson doesn't,
Yeah.
which means he does. Right?
Jefferson's beliefs are opposite of Hamilton.
Very good. Jefferson is the opposite of Hamilton. So, how does he feel about taxes?
Good.
Why?
For the debt.
Because we got to pay off the debt. There's this need. We have to pay off the debt.
Yeah, taxes have to be, yeah. And then you need to put it in a bank.
We have to put it somewhere. That's right. We got to put this money somewhere. Let's put it in a bank. Right? If what we just did here sounds repetitive, like we just did this, yeah. But this is the document that's making those arguments.
This whole document is just him telling his friend, like venting to his friend about Jefferson. So he's knocking on Jefferson, but that's saying, but this is what I believe.
That's exactly right. He talks about Jefferson. This is basically a letter where he's complaining. Jefferson is this and Jefferson is that. And I think he calls him a girl somewhere. And that has the same connotation back then as it does now. For us guys to call to call a fellow guy a girl, especially when you're like 7, oh, there's nothing worse. You take that back. I am not a girl. Right? Same thing. Right? You're a Jefferson, Tom, you're a girl. Same connotation. Okay? Any questions? You now know how he feels about taxes, like the whiskey tax, and the import tax, the tariff. You now know how he feels about the national bank and why he believes in those things. The general issue is this. So everyone listen. General issue is this. To Hamilton, should the federal government have the authority to have an impact on the American economy through taxes, through spending, and through collection of taxes and putting in the center? Yes. Why? There's a need, right? This huge debt. We have this need. And this is the other important thing that's mentioned in here. Does the Constitution give you the authority to do this? to Hamilton. Okay, exactly. In other words, it does. The Constitution gives us the authority to do this because it doesn't say we can't. Specific examples would be the whiskey tax, the tariff of 1789, and the National Bank. Those are your specific examples. What about synthesis? Can anyone in here come up with an idea of another time when things like taxes and spending were an issue in American? What? Beautiful, right? Yes. The incredible spending spree that the U.S. government went on during the Great Depression under FDR's, I'd be very impressed. You want to know what FDR called his program? So FDR did exactly what Hamilton would have done. Went on a massive spending spree during the Great Depression. They said at the time, grab 3 random letters, throw them down. That's probably a program FDR came up with. Right? So the AAA and the CPA and the PWA and the FDIC and this and that and the other thing. All these programs. Find out what he called that. Find out what FDR called his presidency. Right? To get us out of the Great Depression. Wonderful. Find a direct quote about the Great Depression and how FDR handled it. Any others? Someone say Obama did the same thing to get us out of something called the Great Recession, not the Great Depression, but the Great Recession. Obama did the Ford. No, not Ford. Chevy. Owned Chevy. Owned it. Because if they said, well, we're not going to do that, Chevy was going to go under. They were going to go under. And he came up with this idea, we can't let it go under. It's the magic words at the time were, it's too big to fail. It's too big to fail. We can't let these massive American companies go under, so the U.S. government will buy them, own them. U.S. government won't go out of business. That doesn't make any sense. The U.S. government cannot go out of business, so Chevy cannot go out of business. And we'll protect them until they're ready to stand on their own 2 feet again. That is a liberal approach. FDR had a liberal approach. Hamilton had a liberal approach. Okay, find a direct quote about Obama during the Great Recession buying General Motors or any other program that they had. Okay. Any questions on that? How are we doing for time? Yeah. Maybe we'll just get through one document here because I want to give you your essays. So allow me to say this. You can find a direct quote about FDR that you can put in your second essay. Or do we know the names of any historians that might have a point of view about Hamilton or Jefferson? Do we know any historians?
Oh, wow.
Howard Zinn, Schweikert, and Allen. If you Google, you can get their entire textbook online for free. It's there. Just Google it. Zinn's book is called A People's History of the United States. The entire book is online for free. Schweikert and Allen's book is called A Patriot's History of the United States. The entire book is online for free. Find a direct quote of a historian talking about these people as far as these documents are concerned. There's your direct quote. You understand? You can have a historian talking directly about Hamilton and Jefferson, or you can have a quote about a synthesis example that you would link to whatever topic. Any questions? Okay.
Our plans have to go into that.
Your essays.
Today. Into where?
Today after school.
I'll talk about them more tomorrow, so bring them back with you tomorrow. I need these back. These are all submitted to the U. I have to prove to them that I'm doing my job. So you don't get to keep these. So take them home, show mom and dad, get your $10, whatever. But I need them back. Riley.
Were they overall good?
Yes, I will talk about them. Kayla.
What'd you guys do?
Wait, so you like mark them up, right?
Yep. Chandra. What's Chandra. Jody. Yeah.
I want to know the one thing about
I got
Ben.
a 19. I got an 18.
Grace. Ilsa. Great.
I'll just say
Eve,
Here.
Maddie below. Bryson, plot it.
Here.
Liv. Stevie. Jack. Maddie Bufling.
anyways, we do.
Ellie Shumke.
I can barely read it.
Kristen.
Excellent essay. Your synthesis is wonderful. You're a good writer.
Bryn
You
Cumberland.
put a heart.
Dominic.
Love Potter.
Riley.
Why did he write really right here?
Sora Davies.
Really?
Dawson.
What's that mean?
Tyler Hansberger.
Good stuff.
Hannah Fusey. Tyler. Jet. Emma Hawley. Sarah. Grace. Danica. Zach. Zach wants to.
Really good stuff.
Brody.
What does this even say?
Spencer.
What were you looking at?
Ethan.
I don't know.
You didn't get one back. It's because I didn't get one from you.
Mr. Potter, what does this say? This is a
I have.
Fragment.
Oh, what does it say?
One
man
Yeah, that's probably
being-
what it says. What is fragment?
I'm guessing it's some.
Yeah, it's just fragment.
Isn't it a comma?
That's not a sentence.
One man being substantial professor.
That's not a sentence.
Oh, I could have put it like a
Could have comma there.
yeah.
Try and read what I wrote. I'll take them. Generally pretty good. Usually the first essay is the biggest learning curve. Some of you missed it. You wrote on whether or not one of your topics was about Columbus, and then your second topic was why Columbus did what he did. That's all Columbus. No. First of all, it's not about Columbus and the Europeans. It's about a historian. These essays were supposed to be about two historians' point of views, not whether Columbus was justified or not, whether Zinn's interpretation of Columbus was more accurate than Schweikert and Allen's interpretation of Columbus. Some of you didn't even mention historians at all. Wasn't in your essay at all. You missed it. Okay? But again, generally pretty good. I'll talk more about specific things that I noticed tomorrow.
What is a fragment?
A fragment is a non-sentence. A sentence needs a subject and a verb. Don't give these to me today. I'll take them tomorrow when I'm ready.
Wait, so can I give it to you?
Oh yeah, I won't be here tomorrow either.
Then give it to me the next day. Well, look it over. Some of you'll note my commentary. I need them back so that I can.
No?
Not now.
Oh my god.
You know who you are. Those of you that I wrote, like, I need this back. That's a good thing.
Can you just remember so we can move on?
When?
Wednesday. And we're
Could you come see me during like a flex time?
Sure.
Because
choosing.
I have it.
We're choosing between
Bye, all.
November 3rd, November 9th.
Oh,
November
you'll have
10th.
it.
Why are you knowing?
What?
Why are you knowing?
What do you mean? Oh, because I don't know. Why are you judging me? Jeez. Instead, I think we should go to Purdue and Michigan and